We've always been a town of yes. I've lived in towns where the general response was always no. And it wasn't from officials, first. It was from everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome to Everything Real in Fredericksburg. From local government to economic development and real estate. If it's happening in Fredericksburg, Texas, we talk about it. Now your host, Leanne Bailey.
Just to start off with, thank you for being here. Thanks for
You're welcome. Thanks for the invite.
For doing that. I know you're a busy guy and you have a lot of irons in the fire. So thank you for indulging me on this request. But I've said it before, but my biggest goal is to just be a place where people can come and get to know the locals and learn about what's going on here. We'll have the city manager, we'll have city council members, I'd love to get Paul Tabor with the water district out here and talk about that.
He'd be a great, timely person to have.
Yeah, absolutely. The drought going on. There's folks from the appraisal district I like to have. You're a jack of all trades, which I think I want that to be a positive thing because I didn't say a jack of all trades and master of none. I did not finish that, but that's what I like.
That would be so appropriate.
Yeah. Well, I'll be nice to you today. But that's what I love about you. Talk about you. You've been in Fredericksburg for a long time, but you weren't originally from Fredericksburg. So what brought you here? What's your story?
Jimmy Buffett always says, I'm a nobody from nowhere. Small town Louisiana, exposed to Fredericksburg in the 80s with a consultant gig I had with LCRA and immediately fell in love with it. I knew it was going to be a dynamic place and a great place to raise kids. So we rerouted our lives from Houston via San Antonio to here. And we got here in late 80s. I think it might have been 91 when we moved our family here full time. And my prediction has held true exponentially.
Really?
What a dynamic place to be. It never stops evolving. It never stops changing. It never stops moving. And those are three things that I'm a junkie for.
But it doesn't move fast.
It doesn't move fast, but it moves in leaps. Yeah. Like right now, I think we're seeing a little bit of a downturn, but that's an economic issue. Interest rates have doubled. A lot of the big developments that we have, there's a bunch of them floating around that will happen. They're just happening at their rate. And those big projects, $50, $60 million projects don't happen overnight. Yeah. So those will all happen. But besides that, the town's always been very dynamic. It's had the city's been progressive from day one. We've always been a town of yes. I've lived in towns where the general response was always no. And it wasn't from officials, first. It was from everybody. Yeah. And we have a little of that. But the fact that we've had a progressive thinking, forward thinking group, it's easier to get yes. And yes is the way we go forward. No is absolutely not the way we go forward.
Sure. So
it's been one of those towns I've been super excited to get involved in when I first got here, but I've always been involved in every place I've ever been, whether the place is happy or not about it. And have been super involved. Every committee that shows up, if they've got an opening, I'm on it because I want to know, I want to help, I want to contribute to the look, the feel, and the livability. And that's my three goals for anything I look at.
Wow.
And some of the committees I've been very fortunate to be on for a very, very long time. I help impact the look, the feel, the livability. So that's it.
I love that. Look, feel, livability. Can we steal that? No, I'm just
absolutely.
Kidding. Well, I met you when I first moved to Fredericksburg back 10 years ago in my house. You were doing my inspection. So when I talk about jack of all trades, you are you're a home inspector.
I am the home inspector.
You are the home inspector.
I'm the OG.
We'll give you his phone number and contact information later. But it was a sure welcome for us moving in because you really welcomed us. You visited with us. We had a mutual, we both have flown airplanes before. So I enjoyed meeting someone that also flew airplanes. But just getting to know you, and you told us a lot about our house and some of the history. And I've learned that I always recommend you for inspections because you do have so much history. I mean, the 80s wasn't 20 years ago, you know that. It feels like it should be. But so in my opinion, you've probably been in just about every house in town, if not 2 or 3 times at least.
Some of them 5 times.
Yeah. And more.
And plus, know every person that's ever built a house in town.
Sure.
And I've made it my point to make sure to meet those folks and tell them that eventually I'm going to be coming behind you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I like it because it's not just about the house. Like, you really get to know people and ask questions like, where are you from? What are you doing?
Yes.
Maybe you're just nosy. I don't know.
A little of that. But I think it also helps. That's a very stressful period for a lot of folks.
Yes.
And I'd like to try to make my part not stressful.
Yeah.
Because my work product's going to be all negative.
Yeah.
There's not going to be one pretty picture in it of something that somebody wants to see. So if I can connect and make a relationship with those buyers and with those new people moving to our town and how they're going to impact our town in the long run, that's a plus.
Yeah, and I like that. Talking about connecting with them, you're always here for either a buyer or seller. I do a lot of pre-listing inspections with sellers too, and I like that you're like, just give me a call.
Absolutely.
And I'll help you. And as a realtor, we're not supposed to make recommendations and stuff, and that makes my job easier. And I don't want to be that person. Like you've been in the business so long, you've got the training and the knowledge, and I don't. So I just appreciate that. When just call Jim. Ask Jim.
Ask Jim.
That's your email. Ask Jim. And so, I didn't really want to go that direction first, but it kind of naturally just led into those questions. I think it's cool that you have been in those houses, but you also have a great building on Main Street. I don't know if you have other buildings on Main Street, but you have a popular little company on Main Street. Tell us about that.
Yes, Clear River. So back in the 80s, I was doing a little work with the RTC, and some of you old guys will know what that is. But basically, it was a tough real estate time, and transactions were, lots of properties were being foreclosed on. And I managed to wedge a little property off in San Antonio. And then I got to the point, like, what are we going to do with it? And literally, my hometown best friend my whole life just happened to finish college, and he didn't really have a prospect for what he was going to do. And he just came over to visit us. We were living in San Antonio at the time, and we sat down one night. I'm sure there was some margaritas involved. And we said, what are we going to do with this space? So before it was all said and done, we built the first Clear River. And it was just simply a combination of things that either we liked, our parents liked, or things we knew how to do. And that was cookies and brownies and ice cream baking. So that's how that came about. When I first started doing work, and that was in 86, when I first started doing work for LCRA here, it was probably 87. And I remember coming to Fredericksburg and thinking, oh my gosh, we got to have a Clear River here. I don't care what it's going to take. And of course, Main Street is such a tight group of buildings. It just was hard to get on Main at first. We started off where Pastabella is, and then as soon as we had an opportunity to move over, we moved over.
I didn't know that. That's great.
And overnight, our traffic count quadrupled. So, it's hopefully a legacy that I'm going to leave to my kids.
Yeah.
I'm going through some estate planning right now with an attorney in Austin, and his last comment to me was he came to see Clear River, and he said, it's almost like a little bit of a Chinese fire drill. You really want to leave that to him? Well, and it is a fire drill.
Yeah, that's funny. We'll have to get you back when you get all that settled and tell us about estate planning. So you're not done here. Not done here. Well, for our listeners or watchers that don't know all of Clear River, Clear River is a restaurant, deli, on Main Street. You serve more ice cream than I could even imagine. How many flavors do you think? Do you know?
We manufacture about 160 different flavors in our 36 selection dipping box. We always have about 20 that are consistent, and then the others are rotating seasonal or something in the middle of the night hits me as a flavor. We make it. It's a very.
Do you have a margarita flavor?
Oh, of course.
You do?
Yeah, and we just about 2 years ago got approved. Alcohol is approved as an ingredient, so it actually has tequila in it. We have margarita. One of our most popular flavors is Garrison Brother and Snicker.
Really?
It's phenomenal. It's really good. So,
well, I don't want to burst your bubble, but actually that margarita ice cream is just a frozen margarita. They've been making it for years, but you just drink it out of a straw.
We just call it ice cream so we can sell to kids.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, you have the ice cream on one side, and then the other side is probably just as many flavors of desserts,
Yes.
and cakes,
Yes.
and brownies, and cookies. And I am like, see ball, see girl. Which side am I going to pick? So I love it.
It's and it's also a fantastic community place. We don't even open the doors till 11 o'clock, but at 6:30 we already have customers coming in the back doors.
Yeah.
And it's the same groups, and it's the old folks, and they come in and have coffee, and I get to pick on them. They pick on me.
I hope you pick on them.
Yeah,
That's
I do.
what people love.
And then we have the retired teachers are there on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it's the folks who used to work for Exxon. I mean, it's a rotating process. So we put a lot of effort into making it a community location. Quite honestly, I tell this all the time to people that the only way we survive is with local community support. We could not survive, as a lot of restaurants suffer in this town, not so much recently, but most of them do, with the feast or famine process, whereas all the customers are here on Saturday and Sunday, Friday and Saturday. Sunday's usually unknown.
There's out. Mm-hmm.
And if we didn't have the local support we have Monday through Friday, we would not have survived.
Yeah.
And in all practicality and reality is that if I didn't actually own the physical structure, Clear River would probably not survive anyway, because they'd be paying market rents, and market rents are way more than most people can survive on Main Street unless you're selling jewelry or really high-end markups.
Sure.
So, but the other thing is we're very fortunate that we don't have to waste money on print ads, radio ads, and the way we go about that, our primary advertisement is about 10% of our whole total volume, which is a considerable amount, goes back to the community. And free cookies, lunches for the athletes. I mean, just over and over and over again. But that's our commitment, number one. Number two, that's our marketing.
Yeah. Well, I always say if you haven't been to a luncheon and received a box of your lunch in a box from Clear River, now don't throw away the box because there's an awesome coupon on the side. And it's been a while since I used to work across the street, so I would walk across a lot and get lunch. And then I moved a little further away, but then my daughter picked up where I left off when she was in high school, so they drive over there and have lunch several times a week.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. Like, it's a great place for our kids to go have a quick lunch, and it's healthy. And I don't know if they get ice cream. That part's probably not as great, but no, I love that they do that. But when we first moved here, my favorite memories are just getting Sterling after school and going over to Clear River and sharing, dessert and a little snack, and then going on our way and doing something else. So I love to see all the kids come in, and I love to see the kids from St. Mary's in there with their uniforms on, getting ice cream. It's great.
It's so funny because that Monday through Thursday sales are so predictable.
Oh, yeah.
Early morning, lunch, school.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? Well, predictable's fine in my book.
Predictable's great.
Yeah, I'm going to start getting people and just coming in at random times just to throw things off for you.
We also do quite a few things. We were the first ones, not to brag, we were the first ones in town to offer insurance and vacations to our employees. And we have some really solid, phenomenal, long-term people.
Yes.
And I don't think there's any place in town that can brag that.
I'll let you brag. I think that's amazing. And it's fun to watch these kids grow up, because you kind of see them. They start as a teenagers when they first get their job, and then they're still there. So that speaks volumes.
We currently right now have a third generation employee. Grandmother worked there, daughter worked there, and now grandson works there. Yeah. So, but you stick around a really long time, and sometimes that happens. Yeah. So,
not showing your age at all or anything. So, no, it's good. So, well, what's what else is out there that you're doing? What's besides inspections and running the restaurant or the deli, and what locally are you doing?
So, trying really hard to figure out ways to make it affordable to provide more housing. And I think and it's not just me. A lot of folks are working on that challenge. I personally think it's going to be a matter of, and I'm so excited because I'm actually on the comprehensive plan for the city, which is a brand new project. It's not a new project. We've always operated under a comprehensive plan, but we're reviewing it and revising it. And I think there's some opportunities in there to tweak some zoning so that we can bring in some more affordable lots. And I don't necessarily want to see more subdivisions. I want to see more opportunities.
Sure.
It's any additional housing stock on the ground is going to help our affordability situation. The more competition we have, the more affordable the apartments are. The more product we have, the more affordable the housing is. And we've always been restricted by cost of land and availability of willing developers because they've all been focused on huge projects.
Sure.
And it's just human nature. A builder generally makes 20%, so why would he focus on something that's going to make less of that 20%?
Right.
But I think the market's going to change. So I'm really excited about that. I'm putting a lot of effort into that. I sent your husband and all the city council my 5 goals for 2023, and I'm solidly pushing them. And I'm letting everybody know about them. And one is to create a couple of more, expand our zoning codes. Right now we have an R2. I want that R2 to be restrictive, no short-term rentals.
Right.
And I want it to be where you can build a duplex and sell them individually.
Yeah.
And I think that's
that would help a lot.
And we have too much land currently that's zoned for a big apartment complex, and we don't have a push to build those. So take those and rezone them. So that's just one of my pet junkie peeves. But
Well, you have a good background for that because you've been on the planning and zoning committee, or not committee, board for how many years? What's your experience with that? Yeah, I thought so.
A long time.
Since the day it was created.
And I dropped off for 4 or 5 years. I moved outside the city limits, but as soon as I moved back in, I begged and pleaded to be put back in because that's a great way to impact the feel and the look.
But to be a part of those projects and hear and learn the processes of all of those, I think sometimes we, just from my perspective on real estate, I want to be on a board, and I don't always know the developer's perspective, but you get a lot of that through being
Absolutely.
on that.
Developers in every new idea ends up there, and it's so good to see them and so good to figure out that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great board to be on. Economic Development Commission has been a fantastic board to be on. We've got a dynamic director that's so involved and so personable. And every time the city changes something, I was on the charter review way back when. I was on every time the sidewalk ordinance, the relief route. I mean, all those things have been things that I think will improve livability, improve the look and feel. And so I just naturally held my hand up.
Yeah.
I know I'll probably reach a point where they'll quit calling on me.
Do you think? I don't. I really don't. You're in. They're not letting you go.
I'm gonna put up my hand and go look the other direction.
They'll
Anybody
be holding
else?
your leg. Please don't go. No, I think you're so well respected in the community because you have such a wealth of knowledge. You're very thoughtful, and I've noticed when you speak, you've thought it out. Probably over a few margaritas, you've thought it out, but
It's clarity.
but you're not just a politician. You have business every day. You work. You have a lot of close relationships. I was saying before, one of the things I also enjoy about you is that you know so many people because when you're in the business, whether it be Clear River or your inspections or your real estate, you're talking to a lot of people on the ground, regular communication, regular casual conversations, and that's worth a lot.
And just the overall average from my inspection business side, it's typically 350 new couples a year.
That's crazy.
Or business persons a year. That's about generally what I can produce. And then on the Clear River side, I mean, we run about almost 600,000 people a year through there, and if I'm there, I'm talking.
Yeah. So what was the population roughly when you moved to Fredericksburg back in the 80s?
About 7,000.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
And now we're bouncing off, 10?
I think almost 11.
It's 11?
That's a number that to me actually sounds low, but we've never been marketed as a retirement community because we're not necessarily affordable or cheap. Kerrville does that. But I think now we're bringing in families, we're bringing in everybody. The one phenomenal number that blows my mind is the visitor count, because we used to be weekends, nothing. Now we're full year round. People ask us everywhere we go, when's your slow time? We really don't have one unless there's a freeze.
Yeah.
They stop coming when it freezes. And the economy's changing that a tad bit. And and there's shifts in housing. People, the pandemic really put a pressure on the short-term rental business. I think that's slowing a little bit. Not to disparage any particular group, but the millenniums are chasing something new and shiny, and they're going to cool hotels like the Bevy and the Betty and the Albert, and so I think that business is going to shift a little bit. That model is going to shift a little bit, and then there's also pressure internally. The city current council and mayor administration wants to control that better, and I think it's a good thing.
I do too.
So,
everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah.
You can't extremely, and it did get a little out of hand. It was fun, but now it's time to.
Well, and like you said, like most things, I don't want to call it a fad, but I do sort of feel like
a trend.
A trend.
Yeah,
where people, okay, we've been there and we've done that,
right.
So let's do something else. Where maybe the boutique hotels will
correct
have their time to shine, and then it will come back around and. I don't know what's next, like camping outside or
a lot of that's
glamping,
coming.
and because that was for a while.
Yeah.
Well, what do you see?
I don't get it. I'm not sleeping in a tent and paying you for it.
That's because we're getting old. It would have been fine, like I don't know, 20-something years ago. But I remember when I was a kid, we would go to the lake, and my dad would rent these 2 cabanas, and we had these cots that were like not even a foot off the ground, and not even air conditioning. And I would think, man. My dad was awesome.
Yes, it was so much fun.
That. Like, I need AC. I need a restaurant, a Starbucks down at the bottom, and just, go down and get me a Starbucks.
And they're best to have about 300 channels on that TV because I watch them all.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and it's terrible, isn't it? Yeah. So. Well,
again, that's a trend. It's a trend that one generation that I don't fully understand will follow, and I hope they continue to follow it. That's a continual challenge with Clear River because we were an ideal setup for older. That's why we hit that 50s theme. I've learned to become very much of an Elvis fan, but it wasn't how we started. Yeah. And honestly, that tourist group is kind of falling off. They're just not here as much. And I would be willing to bet if you could scratch through and get some official numbers for the Nimitz that group is dropped primarily because they're going away.
Yeah.
So how do you adapt to the next group that's coming in?
Yeah.
And we haven't changed from 50s music yet, but I'm always tempted to move it up to 70s.
Well, you've kept Grease alive. If you've not been in Clear River, you go in Grease, and it's always playing on a screen. Now, you've got a fancy screen now that it's playing on.
We call it the Jumbotron.
Jumbotron. Can I advertise on it? It's the question.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. No, because you keep Grease going all the time.
36 years nonstop.
Is it the same tape?
No, God, no. We got
No,
stacks of those. Yeah. It's all digital now.
If you said yes, I would believe you. Yeah. How many tapes have you been through? And
every media.
Do we need to get more?
Just wear them out. Yeah. No, now it's some kind of digital stamp. But I noticed I sat and I've never. This is so funny. I've never fully watched the whole Grease, but for 36 years I've seen bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Of it.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, like
that will never go away.
It's funny because that's something I watched in. I don't know, maybe middle school or high school or something. Yeah. And I'm sure my daughter's probably never even seen the whole thing either. But she has seen almost all of it at Clear River. So over a bowl of ice cream. Yeah. So
that's so fun.
So what is your prediction for Fredericksburg for the next 10 years?
I think the population growth and the population move, and that's a bunch more affluent people, still going to put quite a bit of pressure on us. And that's why this new comp plan, that's why I'm so excited the county has got I think they've got the best chance now to control some of their growth, and that has to happen because our resources are limited.
Got to manage it.
Got to manage it. Yeah. Got to figure out a way to make sure it's the right things. I mean, today, one of the shocking reports from the EDC meeting I just came from was from your husband, indicating what our water levels are. We're down 5%. We've never been down. Our aquifer has been solid as a rock. So we've got to figure out a way to make sure that is not depleted foolishly.
Yeah.
And I think the legislative session has some bills in front of it. There's 800 bills coming across, which is mind-boggling. Most of those fall out in committee, but there's some that are giving counties more regulatory authority, and that's sorely needed.
Yeah.
So I think I think our growth will continue. We just want to make sure it's quality growth. Main Street, which is such a dynamic entity, you cannot imagine how many businesses, and I have to remind myself of all of them that year, and that business was there,
yes.
just because there's been so many. But I really honestly think that we have all of Main Street as a whole has to up our game because the expectations are more. And it's not that if we don't up our game, we're not going to win. If we up our game, we'll just win better.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
And because of the pressures of taxes and the value, I mean, Dooley's just sold for a phenomenal amount of money. So that's going to impact all our taxes, number one. And that's going to have to be a retailer that's going to play serious.
Well, and if our listeners don't know, there's a no chains on Main.
Correct.
Or no franchises on Main. So while other downtowns have some of those anchors that are a little bit, have the dollars to put in
Absolutely.
and have some different marketing and different products, y'all are the literally mom and pop shops
Correct.
that have, 5 or less.
Correct.
And
Entities.
mostly it's one.
Mostly it's one. And that's
the
what we want.
Fredericksburg location. Yeah. And so you have to be creative and have product.
Yes.
But don't always have that big money behind you to do so.
Yes. And the theory was, and a lot of us who own buildings on Main Street literally shot ourselves in the foot, but we were the big promoters of it. And the theory was is that if our visitors are going to, I hate calling them tourists, they're visitors, they're here to visit us. If they're driving by 5 retail stores and they get here in those same 5 retail stores, they're not going to drive anymore.
Nothing unique about that.
Nothing unique about it. So that was a big push. It took about 10 years to finally get that into a ordinance form. And it was all self-preservation for everybody.
Sure.
It wasn't for me, it was for everyone. And I honestly believe it's been a success.
Yeah.
I fear that the property tax regulations, as they're set, are going to eventually put pressures on some of the property owners where they're going to actually have to do something about that, because it's going to get to the point where only the real high-end, high profit margin retailers will be able to afford to rent on Main Street. So that's a scary thing.
Yeah.
But we keep evolving. Maybe we can figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's going to tap out a little bit at some point. I think the city and county will have to, and the school district, the taxing districts will have to.
It's a
look
statewide
at
fix.
that a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. And it seems like every single legislative session, the joke is every time the legislature meet, put your hands on your wallet. I think every time they meet, it's a good talking point. Well, we're going to fix the school finance. They never do. Yeah. It's so big and so global problem. And so confusing. Right. So my thoughts are, I never really evolved my business and my life around what happens in Austin. I involve it in what happens and what I impact with my family and my employees. And then after that, my neighbors, and after that, people come into town. Yeah. And that's what we try to do.
Like that.
Yeah.
Are we the only ones that have that no chains on Main concept, or are there other cities?
It's so funny because after we passed it, I remember sharing that ordinance with several cities. I don't think anybody passed it. I think it was so much resistance from the property owners. But at the time we passed it, we had the advantage of most of the businesses on Main still were owner-occupied businesses. So it was easy to get buy-in. That dynamic's changed. Mr. Scully from California is buying a substantial part of East Main. So consequently, I don't think I could have got him. In fact, he has to rename some of his his businesses just to make them fit. Yeah. So I like the fact that he's a very, very, very smart and astute real estate investor, and he knows how to get his tenants to become very aggressive and successful and creative retailers, and that's exactly what the economy is going to require.
Yeah.
So.
Well, something I just thought about for folks that aren't here or maybe don't know a lot of history about Main Street that actually live in Fredericksburg, a lot of these properties are how old? Like 20s, 30s? I mean, they're old buildings.
Our building was 1906,
oh, wow.
And it had actually replaced. You'd have to put one of those historians in, but what I've always heard was that we had a bunch of wooden buildings on Main Street, and when large downtown fires started occurring, Boston, Chicago, the push was, and then at the same time, the Bassey brothers came to town and formulated the process of building Bassey concrete blocks. So a lot of those folks tore those wooden buildings down. And the reason I know that is because I go into attics, and lots of times I'll look up and see wood that was somewhere else. Yeah. It had been somewhere else. And a lot of times you'll talk to, when John Klein was still available, he was an amazing resource for that kind of knowledge. I'd bump into him. He said, I inspected this house. He said, yeah, that was a building on Main Street got torn down, and they rebuilt it there. So, but most of the buildings There are across the street from our building, like where Circle E Candles is. That was an Art Deco style, so that's probably 20s and 30s. Dooley's was 03 or 04, but most of them have been there 100 plus years, and have served the test of time. So
I just read the history on the building close to Clear River with Parts Unknown.
Yes,
about it being the old theater.
Yes,
and that was incredible. I had no idea
because it had been closed when you guys moved here, right? It was already closed as a theater.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely was Parts Unknown back then, or a retailer.
I'll tell you what's really funny is that, and I'm sure every old person in their life goes through this. Perfect example is the building we're in. It belonged to Florine Bruns and her husband Alton, the sweetest couple that ever stepped foot on the planet Earth. They should not have leased that building to us. We had nothing going for us but a dream.
Thank gosh.
Yes.
Thank gosh they were nice.
So at the time, that building was actually for sale, and it was for sale for $87,000, and it had been for sale for 5 years, and we didn't probably have $87 at the time as Clear River as the entity, so we could not buy it. So we leased it for her for many, many years, and then we were finally able to buy it for a lot more than 87. But I think about those buildings that have changed hands, particularly the theater, because it was like $200,000.
Yeah,
and and most of I can remember when the newspaper building sold. Dan Scully bought that one also, and I remember the price tag was $1 million, and everybody in town was like, "Yes, that's amazing." Yeah. So
incredible.
Isn't that incredible? And so you just don't know. I know we'll reach a cap because there's only so much money you can pay for so much square footage, but I don't think we've reached that cap. I think that's going to continue to push.
Well, there's a lot of people with a lot of money these days.
There's a lot of people with a lot of money, and they love our area, and I'm so happy they love our area. We still like every growing community, we have some challenges, but I think we have the IQ and the mental power here to work on those challenges. My always fear is that politics gets in the way, and sometimes that's happening. But if we just put that mess aside and just figure out what's going to be best and work for that and forget the little petty fighting, that's going to make it happen. And I always have confidence. I have been called chicken before because I won't run for an elected position. One is I don't take rejection very well. So I think I would be crushed if I didn't win. But a long, long time ago, someone I've always respected, he was kind of a business mentor, told me that you can typically move that needle a lot further, a lot faster if you're behind the scenes. Yeah. So I've always tried to approach it that way. Yeah. And that's why, in fact, this current election coming up, 50 people say, well, time for you to run. No.
I agree with that. I think there's, while city council members really have a hard job and make a lot of big decisions, there's a lot that goes on before it even gets to council. And you're a part of that. Those committees that make those, that hear it, take it in, either approve it or don't approve it. And so you're kind of the filter before it gets to.
I try to be.
How big's the siphon is what I need to know. But,
yes, exactly.
Well, okay, so this is great. Like, I've really enjoyed this so much that I didn't know, and I'm glad to hear about. What's just a final thought that you would leave our listener just locally, or something that you just love about Fredericksburg that you'd want someone to know about, or both?
So I always tell everybody, and I've worked in several communities, I've lived in several communities, I've never run across a place that to me had such an easily attainable feel of community. When I say community, a bunch of people, a bunch of good friends. In most cases, we all replaced, which was a bunch of families. Yeah. But I've never run across a place. I mean, you can go and I don't want to call any place out, but 22 miles down the road, there's no sense of community there.
Right.
So we have that here. And moving here was the first time I actually ever felt that.
Wow.
And it's still true today.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of people come into town, but overall, I would never want to be heard quoting Hillary Clinton, but it takes a village not just to raise kids, but to do everything.
Yeah.
And we have a phenomenal village here.
Yeah.
I've never been disappointed in what's happening here.
Yeah.
I never go home and go, oh, that's horrible. I was like, well, okay, we can make that better.
Yeah.
So that's one. I do think it's so funny. Right now we're going through the comp plan, and Anna's so excited about. I choke myself up sometimes. Anna's so excited about what the responses have been from the public. We had 1,000 people respond to questionnaires. Now, about 850 of those want pickleball courts.
Oh no, I have friends that really want pickleball courts.
I've got to go find a pickleball court just so you can see what
I
it
want to
is.
make sure that they didn't just keep putting in the same person. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's exactly what happened. But the overall response was, and I'm a little bit disappointed, and they know that at City Hall, that we tried to combine comp plan and also park master plan together. I know we did it for economic reasons. We got one company to do both, but they're two separate entities, they're two separate needs. But I'm hoping that I live long enough to see us really develop a parks and our parks group. I think about, everybody hates when I compare this community to the other one I kind of live in. And that little dynamic community on the coast, they have activities. They have a coordinator that only does, right now, there's probably old people square dancing in their community center.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, and I'm excited about it. I think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that'll also facilitate, and my hope is that when we bring, because some of this got to be done with bond money. I hope the next time we bring a project to the community, we can do a better job of selling it.
Yeah.
And we can get a better job of buy-in so the no's don't outweigh the yeses.
Yeah.
The yes group or the need group is a little bit disenfranchised from that. Some of them don't vote, which is sad. Some of them do not stay in touch.
Yeah.
A lot of those folks didn't come out of the woodwork until the bond election for parks failed.
Yeah.
And all you have to do to see the need is on a Saturday morning in the spring, drive down Highway 16, and there's 1 million kids playing soccer.
There are a lot of kids. Yeah.
And they're playing soccer in a field that's full of stickers.
Yeah.
But I'm very proud of the fact that I convinced our last city manager to buy that piece of dirt because it came available when Bill Ham passed away, and I called him that day and said, whatever it takes, empty the budget for the fire department, buy that piece of dirt. We need it. So that happened.
Forget about the fires.
We don't care about that.
Yeah.
So that happened. Just joking, fireman. I always contribute to the fish fry and everything else. But it happened. So now we just have, and I do honestly think that that particular plan was super aggressive, and it had a lot of things thrown in there, like any kind of legislative procedure. Well, let's do this while we're doing it.
Yeah.
So I think and I don't know if we have the bandwidth right now because our council is so super focused on STRs, but we need to bring something back up that's workable. And I'm hoping that the results from the 1,000 people that contributed is going to give us a better path. Yeah. And I think that's something that's an element that we have to have for this to be a viable community in the future, because we don't have the ability for everybody to spend their spare time hunting and fishing here.
Right.
Because most of that land is privately held. So we have to bring other things that's going to take the youth, take the adults that have time and make it work. We should be, as a community, this is where I get critical, embarrassed by the fact that 22 miles down the road, they got the Crocs Center. Have you been to that?
No.
That is the most phenomenal community center I've ever been in.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they got it.
I know.
And we didn't.
Yeah.
So it's full service. It's everything. Yeah. And I'm embarrassed again by the fact that somehow or another we missed that opportunity. And I honestly know for a fact, and I know this because one of the city council members there is very good friends of mine, that Croc wanted to be here.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we can never, ever let that opportunity go. The other thing we have to focus in on is that we have to protect our main asset, which is not in everybody's eye, but it's Main Street. And we have to be more careful about what shows up and what comes there and how we handle it. We have that big project coming up, which I'm really excited about, but I think it's going to put a really hurt on parking situation. Mm-hmm. So we got to make sure that the next time one of those, and they'll come. When that's successful, another one's going to be here, I guarantee you.
You're right.
And we got to make sure that we negotiate better with them to provide housing for their employees. And the Albert did a fantastic job. They bought an apartment complex. They're I think they're going to be super corporate citizens.
Absolutely.
But we have to make sure that we up our game on, okay, but you also have to take care of parking. So.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've noticed over the years is if we can be a little bit more forward thinking and have a plan,
yes,
or just an idea. If this happens, last night I watched a movie. This is silly, but these people are on this volcano and they're like, what if it erupts? And they're like, no, it's not going to erupt. Well, it did.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we have to think, well, what if it's going to erupt, and just have an idea if it happens. It may not ever happen, but if we can be a little bit forward thinking and not wait for it to happen and then react. So proactive thinking is good.
So for a short period of time, I did a lot of work in Bastrop, Texas. A friend of mine from Houston, Tommy Hoover, got really aggressive about buying downtown Bastrop when it was nothing. It was a ghost town. And he told me something. He said that city government, county government, state government always operates at the minimum standard. And that minimum standard is set by statute. So say, for instance, our codes are the minimum standard. He said, we should always operate above the minimum standard. Yeah. We should try to distance ourselves as much to where we can't even see the standard anymore. And I feel that way for our community. We should never, ever operate the minimum standard. We should not be able to see the minimum from where we're operating. Yeah. And that's a very abstract concept, but it's anytime someone comes to me with a minimum standard, the first thing I think of is, I got to get away from it.
Yeah.
I want to extend it. I want to move from it. And that's what we as a thinking community, because we're a very thoughtful thinking community, should do.
Yeah. That really appeals to me.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Everything Real in Fredericksburg. Special thanks to Dixie Cope at Dankworth Dry Goods for providing our location. Get more information about the Fredericksburg area and contact Leanne at labaileyrealestate.com.